On November 5th, 2 days after Election Day, the Reverend Susan Frederick-Gray, president of our Unitarian Universalist Association, shared a letter with the denomination titled, "Hope is in the Struggle." As relevant today as it was last week, we share her words with you now. "Dear leaders," she began, "how is your spirit? These past few days and weeks have been a roller coaster, inviting waves of excitement, uncertainty, and activity. We knew that the 2020 election was not about election day, but election season. People began voting weeks ago, and the work to count every single vote is still happening. On that Thursday, in the face of deep uncertainty and anticipation, she reminded us that this civic practice is tied to our fifth principle, one of our fundamental commitments as a faith. She continued, "As Unitarian Universalists, democracy is a core value and practice of our tradition. Our faith calls us to defend the integrity of the election results. Every voice matters. Every vote matters. We must continue to encourage everyone to be patient as all the votes are counted. Fair counting is worth the wait. Defending the election is worth the wait." She spoke of how we have lived out that commitment as part of what was giving her faith, commending the incredible leadership, action, and organizing of UUs at the local, state, and national level. More than 4,500 Unitarian Universalists from 800 congregations participated in the UU the Vote campaign. Through postcards, letters, phone calls, and texts, we contacted over 2.79 million voters. Across this country, we continue to witness systemic misinformation and voter intimidation tactics to suppress the vote. "It shouldn't be this way," she writes. However, despite the suppression, there was an unprecedented turnout. This is a win for democracy. And we as UUs were part of making it happen. Reverend Susan Frederick-Gray also stressed that the UU the Vote campaign was more than just a get out the vote effort. It was envisioned as a strategic campaign to help us build more muscle for partnership, courage, relationships with our neighbors, and articulating and embodying our values. It was intended to strengthen partnerships between our congregations and organizing efforts led by Black and Indigenous people, people of color, and directly impacted communities. It was rooted in a vision of building power and capacity for a more just, sustainable, and equitable society. She continued with a message all the more powerful given when it was written. "No matter the outcome of election 2020, the truth I know is that hope is found in the struggle. Actions rooted in one's values, rooted in what we love and know to be true. These are what kindle the fire of hope and inspiration in our hearts and in our communities. Hope is not found in being bystanders. Hope grows when we show up for justice, for love, and for human dignity. So even as we waited for results last week, she urged that we remember that there will be many opportunities for us to continue our work together and live our values. Unitarian Universalism calls us to repair the moral basis of our common life, facing and addressing the injustices that COVID has laid bare, to create the inclusive, anti-oppressive world we imagine. Finally, she reminds us, as I would remind all of us too, that these times are hard on our hearts. So she closes. I encourage you to find time for rest and self-care. Let's also take a moment to remember that we are deeply connected to each other in love and in community. We are ready, we are powerful, and we are enough.
Part of what we draw from these days is sacred stories. Sacred stories from sacred traditions that speak to us. Give me Jesus. Or around the world in this season, in our nation, the celebration of Diwali, offering some of its sacred stories to anchor us. Depending on where you live in India or what community you are from, you will have different traditions around the holiday of Diwali. Diwali, after all, is celebrated not just by Hindus, but Sikhs and Jains and even some Buddhists. So the stories will differ. But the celebration of 5 days, which started on November 12th, is without a doubt one of the biggest on the Indian subcontinent, and everywhere it begins with the lighting of diyas, or small earthenware lamps for which the celebration is named, that light the way into homes and temples, fireworks that last all night, special foods, new clothing and special clothing, and the exchange of good wishes. There is a sense in all of the celebrations of this metaphor of light that is victorious in the darkest nights, of good triumphing. Two of the traditions around Diwali that seem most appropriate for where we find ourselves right now are ones we're going to share this morning. Two of the stories.
Two of the stories that are centered during Diwali among Hindus especially involve the successful end of a battle with a demon who is finally defeated. How's that for appropriate? One of those stories, the one told by Hindus in the north of India, is a story of the Ramayana that begins with Lord Ram and his brother Lakshmi, who are sent to live in the forest, banished by their stepmother who wants her own son to be king. Ram's wife, Sita, goes with them. She's a woman of great beauty, and unfortunately for her, the evil 10-headed demon Ravan hears of her beauty and comes to the forest looking for her. Ravan tricks and kidnaps Sita and takes her to his kingdom on the island of Lanka, which is perhaps the modern-day Sri Lanka. Ram and Lakshman search all over for Sita in vain for years. Finally, they encounter the monkey king Hanuman. Hanuman, who has the power of flight, finds Sita, and he and his army of monkeys join the brothers to fight for her return. For 10 days, the battle with the evil 10-headed demon Ravan wages, and just when it seems that Ram and Hanuman, Lakshman, and their armies will lose, Ram borrows a bow and arrow from the gods and defeats the evil demon. The villagers, hearing of how their greatest enemy will no longer trouble them, and long missing their young prince so long in exile, are said to have lit candles, diyas, along the road for Ram and his family to find their way home. More lamps, it is said, than there were stars in the sky. Ram arrives home to be crowned king and rule over his kingdom in Ayodhya for long and prosperous years.
Another tradition in Diwali is the association of the festival, particularly last night, the third night, with the goddess Lakshmi. Wife of Vishnu, the goddess is the goddess of good fortune and prosperity, and it is said that she takes to the roads on the third night of Diwali to visit her devotees. And so, you invite her in, opening doors and windows, literally, lighting earthenware lamps on windowsills and balcony edges and along walkways. You light diyas, in other words, not only for the prince who is finding his way home from exile, but on the third night for the goddess. You prepare to invite prosperity into your life, for her to bless you on her journey. And it isn't just prosperity of the narrowest kind, not just material wealth that you're inviting. It is prosperity in the largest sense of joy, of abundance, of health, of family strength, of love. You invite all of that in out of the dark, long nights of winter. May we all find ways to do the same. Happy Diwali.
We offer you now the words of the Reverend Mark Belletini, who once served this congregation as a ministerial intern and later as an interim assistant minister, and who also happened to be my minister growing up. A gorgeous reminder, maybe, of how what we do ripples out into the world and sometimes back again in a beautiful and virtuous circle. The words themselves, we hope, remind us all of what election promises we might renew to the world and ourselves in this season. I hear the polls are going to be open on Tuesday, all day. Good. I certainly intend to go to them, and I certainly invite you to go to them and vote too. But today I say the polls are not just open on Tuesday. I say they are open every day, every hour, even here, even now. I'm going to vote right now for the right to dream of a world where the word politics doesn't stop me in my tracks, and where the word honor still has a few good meanings left. I'm going to vote right now for the power of free people to actually be free, no matter who they are, no matter who has abandoned them, no matter who hates them. Actually, I'm going to vote for love. I'm going to vote for truthfulness as the norm, not the exception. I'm going to vote for a world that doesn't vote for killing, control, and swagger. I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for me. Right now, right here. Silently, but for real.
Richard Blanco is a poet who came to the U.S. from Cuba by way, briefly, of Spain. He's an American immigrant citizen who spoke these words first on January 21st, 2013, at the inauguration of Barack Obama, speaking of one nation, under God and blue sky. We'll read the last 3 stanzas of it as we close this morning. One sky, since the Appalachians and the Sierras claimed their majesty, and the Mississippi and Colorado worked their way to the sea. Thank the work of our hands, weaving steel into bridges, finishing one more report for the boss on time, stitching another wound or uniform. The first brush stroke on a portrait, or the last floor on the Freedom Tower jutting into the sky that yields to our resilience. One sky toward which we sometimes lift our eyes, tired from work. Some days guessing at the weather of our lives. Some days giving thanks for a love that loves you back. Sometimes praising a mother who knew how to give, or forgiving a father who couldn't give you what you wanted. We head home through the gloss of rain or weight of snow, or the plum blush of dusk, but always home. Always under one sky, our sky. And always one moon, like a silent drum, tapping on every rooftop and every window of one country. All of us, facing the stars. Hope, a new constellation waiting for us to map it, waiting for us to name it together. Irving Berlin arrived at age 5 from Russia, a small Jewish boy escaping the pogroms and discrimination and poverty of the place from which he was born. He would later write, among other songs, God Bless America, and this one, about our blue sky days and hope.